Welcome to the first show of the day. I'm so happy you're here. Or if you're watching in the replay, thank you so much for watching the replay. I'm Chef AJ, and this is Chef AJ Live. It was a program created when the sheltering in place started just to create a sense of community and connection, and other people started watching it, so we decided to do it every day, a couple of times a day. When the sheltering stops, maybe I'll do it once a day, but I have really interesting people that you may not have heard of. And so that's what I really love doing. I love talking to people. You know, if you sign up to be on my mailing list, we send out an email every night announcing who the guest is for the next day and the replays from the day before. And while you're certainly welcome to ask questions live, it's better when you send them in because then they don't disappear. What happens with the live feed is it goes really quickly and sometimes your question does disappear. Our next guest is very beautiful, all the way from the UK. She is the author of a best-selling book called Rewind Your Body Clock. I was introduced to her by another guest, fabulous guest that we've had on several times, Frank Sabatino. Please welcome Jayney Goddard. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, AJ, thank you so much for inviting me. It's an absolute pleasure. So yeah, and I can't wait to speak with our viewers and hopefully answer some questions, and let's see where we go.
I know they're going to love you. So the first question is, we live in a time in human history where lifespan is probably better than it's ever been before, but our health span isn't necessarily so good. So how can we not just live longer, but live better?
Well, that's such a good question. It's something I talk about a lot. And obviously, as you quite rightly say, lifespan is increasing, health span is decreasing. What are the reasons for that? Well, it's because we live in this industrialized world. So a lot of people out there, of course, are eating what you guys over the pond there would call the standard American diet. We would just call it a standard diet. And it quite honestly is so desperately lacking, as we all know. We're so far removed from nature. We're so far removed from what we should be eating, what we humans have evolved over many millennia to actually eat. And suddenly in the last, essentially in the blink of an eye, as far as history, historical terms are concerned, in the most recent blink of an eye, we've suddenly transitioned to eating sugars and fats and processed foods and so on. And as you and I both know, that really is not the answer. So what's actually happening is that the reason that health span is decreasing is because we are developing chronic diseases, those diseases that we actually wrongly associate with being a natural part of the aging process, much younger. In fact, we're starting to see those diseases of aging in children, turning up in children, where we're seeing heart disease, arterial disease, of course, type 2 diabetes and so on, all of those ailments that were essentially reserved for the elderly, they are turning up in kids now, which is incredibly worrying. One of the things, talking about this idea of us having this notion that as we get older, we should get sicker. In fact, actually, nothing could be further from the truth. And, the point is, you'll know this, AJ, you're an avid exerciser. We are just as capable of building muscle and staying well into our much older years as we are when we're younger. So realistically, yes, of course, we accumulate some wear and tear and so on over the years, but it doesn't have to signal our descent into decrepitude and and so on. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And I think you and I are very much singing from the same hymn sheet on all of this.
I love that. Our descent into decrepitude. I've never heard it phrased that way. That's beautiful.
Thank you very much. Yeah, but that is kind of what it is, and it's a real shame because vibrant health is our birthright. And I know that, of course, Dr. Frank Sabatino will talk about this an awful lot as well. It is our birthright. We do have the right to be healthy. And a lot of people will think, well, gosh, how can I possibly be healthy if I don't take the medications that are foisted upon us and that we're really brainwashed into believing that we need. It's so ironic because, of course, I'm from England, as you might be able to tell from my accent. And, you know, over here we have something called the National Health Service. And the truth of the matter is, while it is absolutely brilliant, and my goodness, you know, if you're unlucky enough to, you know, get hit by a number 9 bus, then my goodness, you know, you'll be taken off to hospital and you'll be put back together again with the most incredible, by the most incredible doctors, nurses, surgical teams and whatnot. It is a brilliant system, but by the same token, there's, you know, we ought to almost call it the National Illness Service, because, you know, the stock in trade of doctors, unfortunately, as a result of their training, I mean, I know their hearts are in the right place, but as a result of their indoctrination while they are being trained, they are essentially trained to prescribe drugs. That's what they learn. I don't know how it is in America, but over here in the UK, doctors will probably get about 3 hours of nutrition training, if that, if they're lucky, that is, in the whole 7 years of their basic training, which is so shocking. I was speaking at, I speak at governmental level for different governments around the world. I was speaking at the UK Parliament on health and well-being and what we can do for the health of the nation. And I was actually shouted down by scientists who were saying that there's no correlation between eating a healthy diet and health and well-being. If you can actually believe that, it's shocking. It just is shocking.
So on your website, which I've posted a link for, you have a test where we can actually assess our biological age. Is it really possible to turn back the clock?
Yes, it really is. It's not just possible to turn back your biological clock, and I'll explain what that means first and foremost, but it's also possible to actually largely halt your biological aging process, or at least stave it off, slow down the development of ailments. Now, what I did on my website was that I've set up a completely free to use system that people can go into, and they can actually do various tests. These are tests that correlate to certain ages, if you like. So a balance test, the amount of time that you can balance on one leg with your eyes closed. The number of seconds that you can do that for indicates and can be extrapolated to represent a biological age. So essentially, the longer you can balance with your eyes closed, the biologically younger you are. There's a skin pinch test. So you pinch the skin on the back of your hand and you let it go. And the sooner it springs back to, you know, how it was before, the biologically younger you are. And there are several of these tests. I didn't just make them up out of the blue. It's really important for you to know that, because where I'm coming from, although I talk about everything health related and completely natural, I'm coming from a totally evidence-based. So I'm a geek, I'm a scientist at heart. So you can be absolutely certain that all of the recommendations and all of the tests are fully grounded in robust scientific research. So you can do this gamut of tests, and what will happen is that at the end of the tests, you will essentially be given a score. And that will be noted on the site, and it's all completely anonymous. So we, looking at the site, the back end of the system and so on, cannot tell who you are. We cannot tell any information about you at all. I think that's really important, because people are putting in personal data. You don't even have to put your real name in. So, you know, just to keep things ultra secure. But you do put your email address in if you want to, because in a month's time, you'll get an email from the system, not from us. It all happens automatically, saying, hey, guess what? It's your time to do your tests again. So you go in, you do the tests again, and then you'll get another score. And eventually you'll end up with a graph showing your progress. Now, we're talking about biological age. So let's just discuss that for a moment, because it's such an interesting thing. A biological age is the age that our bodies and minds are, the whole gestalt, the whole humanness of our human being. So it differs from chronological age. Obviously, chronological age is the age that we are in years, the number of times we've been around the sun. So biological age is very different. This is how old we are really in real terms. So your biological age can actually differ hugely from your chronological age. Now, a case in point, in fact, I'm a very good example, and this is actually why I got so interested in biological aging. I unfortunately was dealt a rather challenging set of genetic cards. So I was originally a ballet dancer. Towards the end of my dancing career, I started noticing I was getting kind of really stiff and, not so flexible as I was. And I thought, elderly ballerina, that's bound to happen. Um, but it got worse and worse. And then I went to the doctor. She said, oh, don't worry, it's tendonitis. And about 3 weeks later, I was then fully wheelchair bound. It happened that fast. And what happened was I developed rheumatoid arthritis, the autoimmune condition that I'm sure many of our viewers will know all about. So what actually happened was that I just ended up in a wheelchair, completely dependent upon other people, completely unable to move, completely non-weight bearing. At my worst, following a massive flare-up, I ended up in hospice care, being given just 2 weeks to live. Because I had gone down to 80 pounds. I'd completely lost all of my muscle. I was in such a state of inflammation, dramatic chronic inflammation, that my body had just catabolized all of my muscle. I was literally skin and bones. And I was kind of locked into a fetal position. I couldn't move, and I was in the most excruciating agony you could possibly imagine. The only thing I was being offered conventionally from the doctors was chemotherapy in an effort to bring down my inflammation. But I knew in my heart of hearts that would be a really foolish decision. I was so incredibly vulnerable, incredibly ill, that I knew that would be definitely the end of me. But they did say, look, we reckon you've probably got about 2 weeks. You're in such a dreadful state. Get your affairs in order. What I did was not do that. Unfortunately for me, and I'm sure a lot of us, rebels at heart, it was like a red flag to a bull. And so what actually happened was that I thought, no, that can't be it. I just can't buy into this prognosis. And so what happened was that I called in all my friends, everybody in the natural healthcare field that I know and love and respect, and I know they are brilliant. And we just threw everything at it. Nutrition, we threw absolutely everything you can imagine, from spiritual healing to Reiki to homeopathy and so on and so on and so on. Now, you might be asking yourself, if she was a practitioner then, how come and she knows all this stuff about nutrition and diet, how come she wasn't doing that anyway? Well, the truth of the matter is that I thought I was. This is the early 90s. So what's really important to understand is that at the time, what I thought and popular thinking dictated was a healthy diet was oily fish, greens, salad, and a glass of red wine. Drink coffee because, people who drink coffee are supposed to live longer. All sorts of really odd science with really great confounding issues around it. But, that was the received wisdom. What was actually happening was that I was accelerating my inflammation by eating oily fish and having, various, the odd glass of wine and this, that, and the other. And so I was just making myself more and more and more ill. Eventually, friends of mine came along and said, what you actually need to do is go raw vegan. So I railed against it, but eventually I succumbed to that, and I did. And that was the thing that ultimately made the difference to me. Massively fast. It was an incredible transformation. But what happened at that time, coming back full circle to biological aging, was that a friend who came in to see me when I was in the hospice said, oh, we're going to test your biological age. I've got this system here. And I said, well, what's that then? Because I didn't know anything about it. And he said, oh, well, let's do this, this, and this. And we did. And I came out on these tests with a biological age of 55. And I was only 34 at the time. So I was measuring an awful lot older than my chronological age. So that was an older biological age, older by a lot. The interesting thing is that after going raw vegan, and doing it for some time, I tested after about 5 or so years. I had rewound my body clock hence the name of the book, Rewind Your Body Clock, I'd actually rewound my biological age to 27 years old. So by that time, I was early 40s. And I still maintain that biological age of 27 years old based on those really robust scientific tests that we have on the website. So that gives you an idea of how I came to this passion for, dare I say, natural anti-aging. I don't really like that term anti-aging, AJ, because it almost sounds pejorative. It almost sounds like it's a bad thing. The truth is that we're all aging all the time, but the reality of the situation is that we don't have to age badly, and in fact we can halt and even reverse our biological age. Does that help?
That is absolutely incredible that there's good news. Instead of anti-aging, let's come up with something that's completely anti-dying. That would be my preference.
I agree, absolutely, yes.
You know, we're getting so many comments on, and I've met you in person, I know this is true, that your hair sparkles. You've got to tell us the secret to beautiful hair.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Well, actually, genetics, obviously. I come from a family of people with very, very, very long hair. In fact, I'll sort of show you. This is kind of, I don't know if you can see how.
Oh, do you have you have a few pieces of fairy hair in?
I have got some fairy hair in, yes.
That's the sparkles. Your hair is just beautiful.
Oh, thank you, AJ. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's definitely a genetic factor, but actually when I was sick, I did lose a lot of hair. At one point, with the rheumatoid arthritis treatments, they did put me onto a chemotherapy drug called methotrexate, and I lost an awful lot of hair. Again, funny enough, I was doing some research not so long ago and writing about hair care and so on. And the secret to regrowing hair, whether it's for men with male pattern baldness, or whether it's for women who also get a version of male pattern baldness, because we also have testosterone in our systems, or if people have lost hair through having chemotherapy, you're going to think this is crazy, but what I'm about to tell you is so easy and cheap and simple, but it works, and it works better than minoxidil. This treatment has been trialed against minoxidil and other hair regrowth, conventional medical hair regrowth preparations. It's actually rosemary essential oil, of all things. Now, what actually happens is that you get your shampoo. I would always say, especially for anybody who's had chemo and they've lost their hair as a result, get a organic baby shampoo, unscented if you possibly can, because the fewer chemicals you've got going into your systems, we all know, so much the better, because those chemicals, especially if you're not using an organic version of shampoo, are hormone disruptors, and quite honestly that's the last thing you need going on if you've got any form of cancer or other really disastrously dangerous chronic ailment. So you get a baby shampoo and you'll put 3 to 4 drops of rosemary essential oil. Again, use an organic one if you possibly can get it, into the shampoo, smush it up in your hands, and then lather your hair with it. Wait for 2 to 3 minutes and then just rinse it off. Now, that's one treatment, and that actually regrows hair really, really fast. I've trialed it on men. I've trialed it on myself. I always experiment. I'm a great self-experiment. I always do it on myself first, and then if it works, then I'll tell other people about it. This has been researched. There's really good supporting data. But from an empirical perspective, quite a few of my girlfriends have had breast cancer. And so they've been on chemo and lost their hair. And so they've all tried this rosemary essential oil treatment. And their chemotherapy, their oncologists and their chemotherapy nurses and so on have all said, wow, your hair growth is really fast. It really speeds up regrowth dramatically. The mechanism of action there is that it changes the way that your body processes dihydrotestosterone, which is what causes hair to drop out, and it affects hair follicles. It reverses that process. The other thing you can do is you can also use and get the same sort of results, but it's not quite as easy to do, is with onion juice. You can buy onion juice online, or you can actually make your own, pretty easy, just as you would with normal juice. You can rub that into your scalp and you leave it. The good thing about that is that as soon as it dries, you don't have an oniony smell, but again, it has that same sort of effect of stopping the dihydrotestosterone, causing the hair dropping and so on. And then the other thing, just ultimately to give your scalp a treatment and to clear the scalp in order for baby hair to come through more easily, and so it just looks fuller faster, is to wash your hair, condition it, and then do a final rinse with diluted apple cider vinegar. And so what you'll do is you'll take a third of a cup of apple cider vinegar and you'll dilute that in a couple of cups of water, and then just splosh that all over your hair right from the scalp all the way through to the ends. And so the other side effect that has, apart from allowing baby hairs to come through and to make your hair look thicker immediately, is it actually flattens the hair cuticle. So it's an optical illusion. It makes your hair look shinier because the light is able to bounce off flat hair cuticles. So the problem is if they're all rough, they don't emit light. If your hair is smooth, if the actual individual hairs are smooth, light bounces off them. So your hair looks healthier and shinier as well. So that's a little sort of another little trick. The other thing you should do is always do a final rinse with cold water if you can possibly bear it. Again, that flattens the hair cuticle. And finally, never ever use a looped cotton towel, because those loops can actually, the cotton roughens the hair cuticle, again, making your hair look dry. And again, you won't get that sort of shiny thing. What I do is I found online I'm trying to think what it's called. It's a special towel that it's very, very smooth. I'm trying to think what the actual name of the material is.
I know what you're talking about. I've seen it on TV. I
Yeah.
can't think of the name though.
Yeah, if people go online, they'll be able to just find it quite easily. If you just say smooth towel, it's one of those, a lot of people use them in the kitchen. It's one of those materials that soaks up loads of fluid. It is a synthetic material, but it soaks up loads and loads of fluid. We'll remember it. I know it'll come back to us once we start talking about something else, AJ.
I just Googled it, microfiber hair towel.
Microfiber, that's it. Yes, I knew we'd get it.
Yep, Amazon has it. Terrific.
They do.
I don't necessarily want to grow my hair out, but I would love my hair to be as shiny as yours. And people are asking, what about colored hair? Do you have any advice on hair, how to do that safely and ethically?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, you can get vegan, cruelty-free hair colors. Go for ones that are vegetable in origin. I'm a massive fan of henna because it conditions your hair really, really well as coloring it. I would say you can get henna powder, but that's so messy. You can actually get henna creams, much easier to use. And the one I've got one in particular, which is a Brazilian one, and that's got lots of lovely essential oils in, so it smells gorgeous. You can get it in America. And so if you just Google henna cream, you'll come up with lovely ones. Really importantly, what we do know about coloring hair is that synthetic hair dyes have been found in lymph tissue, particularly in women, possibly because more women tend to dye their hair than men do. So it's possibly just showing up in women. It may not be that women metabolize hair dye differently. We simply don't have that data. Yeah, I would definitely steer clear of anything synthetic, particularly black hair dye. That is really a massive culprit. Very, very, very dangerous stuff. Just don't even go there.
Yeah, well, it's been 7 weeks for those of us in many states in the United States that we can't even get to a hairdresser.
No, that's right, exactly. I know you could do your own, but that's always a bit of a dodgy.
Are eyelashes different? At one point when I was first diagnosed with hypothyroidism, I lost my eyelashes, but I've never had, luxurious eyelashes, and I really don't like wearing false eyelashes or even wearing mascara. Is there anything we can get our eyelashes to grow?
One of the best things we can do actually is just use, and you've got to be really minimalist with this, but actually coconut oil on your eyelashes. You don't want to put too much on, because the thing is, if you get coconut oil in your eye, it really smarts. But just literally rubbing a little bit of coconut oil onto the ends of your eyelashes conditions them, and they actually end up looking thicker. They end up sort of growing, looking thicker. So that's it. I would be very cautious about having things like eyelash extensions. I've tried all of these things, because I find it quite fun actually to experiment with various bits and pieces. But I tried eyelash extensions and they really compromise your eyelash health. So I just literally just kind of use a coconut oil conditioner.
Nice. A few people have joined us late, so not to have you repeat everything, but maybe the Reader's Digest version about who you are, your book, and which disease you had, why you had it, when you had it, and what you did
Of
to help
course.
it.
Yes. Okay. Absolutely. In fact, there we go. That's it. So that's the book. So that's my book, everybody. That's called Rewind Your Body Clock. I'm Jayney Goddard, and that book has been proven to be quite popular. It's sold out within 2 hours of going onto Amazon and went straight in at the #1 spot of all books on Amazon, not just in its particular section. So, and it was serialized by the Daily Mail and all sorts. So it really has been, it's the right book at the right time. It's all about biological aging. So that's what we can do to stay happier, healthier, and younger for longer. So what we were talking about, AJ, was we're talking about the fact that while our lifespans are increasing, our health spans, the point at which we get sick, is actually decreasing. So we're getting sicker and developing chronic diseases that we wrongly associate with aging poorly at younger and younger and younger ages, and they're even showing up in children now, which is incredibly worrying. So what I tend to do is I tend to teach about natural health approaches and natural lifestyle approaches and so on. But where I'm coming from with all of this is that I'm a complete geek, a science geek, and so everything I give you is absolutely, fully, and always based in robust scientific research. And one of the things that a lot of people joining the broadcast now may have missed is that I had a bout with an absolutely devastating autoimmune disease called rheumatoid arthritis, and I do have other autoimmune issues like Hashimoto's thyroiditis. I'm able to keep all of those under control really very, very well, and literally travel and teach all over the world, and just, I'm non-stop, because I have the privilege of knowing about all of these natural lifestyle approaches that do keep me well. At my worst, I was actually a full-time wheelchair user for 10 years, completely dependent upon others, because I was non-weight bearing, because all of my joints were affected terribly. And at my very worst, I was in hospice care and really told to prepare for the worst and to get my affairs in order, because I really wasn't expected to live. I'd gone down to 80 pounds, and I had literally just kind of shrunk into a fetal position, and I couldn't move. So that's it in a nutshell. And my recovery was very much down to complementary medical or integrative medical approaches, natural healthcare approaches, including nutrition, homeopathy, Reiki, oh my goodness, you name it, aromatherapy, reflexology. We literally threw everything at getting well. The irony, of course, being that I was, a fully qualified practitioner, when I got that sick, I started off life studying homeopathic medicine for 7 years. And then after that, I bolted on discipline after discipline, as many practitioners do. And so, it was terribly frustrating because I thought I was doing everything right at the time. But actually now, I know what I know about, eating a whole food, plant-based, SOS-free diet, primarily raw, probably 95% raw, and exercising appropriately and meditating and doing gratitude practices and working on my mental emotional wellness, which is so incredibly important, and socializing and expressing love and happiness and just doing lovely things with friends. It all makes a massive difference.
You mentioned that when you were healing, you embraced a whole food plant-based diet. That was it 100% raw? Was that what helped you heal? And is that still your diet today? And what
Yeah.
diet do you recommend? And how long have you been doing this diet?
Good question. Okay, so well, I discovered raw veganism in raw whole food veganism back in around about 2000 and when was it? 2003 or thereabouts, and you see, as I was saying before people came on the call more recently, I thought I was doing everything right. I thought I was eating a healthy diet at the time, you know, late 90s, early 2000s, you know, it was all the oily fish was all the rage, wild caught salmon, trout, you know, all of those sorts of things, mackerel and so on and so forth. So I thought I was doing everything right, but actually I really wasn't. And what we know about autoimmune conditions is that the body really doesn't respond well to foreign proteins coming into the body, and it sets off this massive autoimmune response. So you know, if only I'd known now what I known, if only I'd known then what I now know. That's what I'm trying to say. So to answer your question, AJ, I started with a completely raw vegan diet. Within about 3 weeks, I was up and walking, having been told I would never ever walk again. I'd obviously got myself out of the hospice. I'd obviously moved on a lot further. You know, it was quite a while after I was actually based in the hospice. So what actually happened was that I went off. I went to actually went to Hippocrates, and where they do a raw food program, and that worked brilliantly for me. What I tend to find though, because of the way my metabolism works, I put a little, I'm probably 95% raw now to this very day, but I add in certain things like some steamed greens. I add in potatoes, so white potatoes, and I also add in sweet potatoes. I'm SOS free, so I don't have any added refined salt, oil, or sugar. So in fact, actually, AJ, I eat very similarly to the way you eat. You know, I feel as though we were twins, separated at birth nutritionally. So, but yeah, it's really interesting because when we met in Cleveland at the NHA conference, I looked at your plate and I looked at mine, and I thought, my goodness, that matches.
Well, I would love to be your twin.
And likewise, but yeah, so that's what I'm doing now, and I find it works. I find if I'm 100% raw, what I find is that I don't sleep terribly well. I'm not the world's greatest sleeper anyway, but I find that my energy levels are so high. I get kind of wired when I'm 100% raw. So for me, a high raw diet is good. And also, I do believe that there are certain nutrients, and again, the research bears this out, that are more bioavailable when those particular foods are cooked. So there's an advantage, for example, in eating a cooked tomato or tomato, and there's an advantage in eating a raw tomato or tomato. And it's because of of course, obviously, all fruits and veggies have this constellation of phytonutrients that we can take advantage of. And, you know, if you treat these things differently, they have different advantages.
That's wonderful. So I know you are also an expert on menopause, and we get a lot of questions on menopause, people that are menopausal, postmenopausal, perimenopausal. And you know, I heard you say in an interview that in other countries, there's not even a word for the word menopause in their country. And doctors here treat it like it is a disease and they want to medicate it. And a lot of women have questions on should they go on HRT, and how can we go through menopause without all, I mean, I'm sure I've went through it. I don't feel any different. Me and my sister, you know, I've been vegan for 43 years. I have never had a it's 107 now and I'm cold. So I've never had a hot flash. So I empathize with them, but I don't know what they're talking about because I've never had a symptom of menopause. So those that do, how can we help them recover?
Yes, that is such an incredibly good question. Thank you. So here's the thing, you're absolutely right. In various countries where they eat a whole food type of diet, they don't have the same sort of symptoms as we do here. So, and as you rightly say, you know, one of my YouTube videos, I talk about the fact that, you know, they don't have a word for menopause because simply periods stop and that's it. And they don't get symptoms. It's just, that's all that happens. And they sail through it. So why is this? And so I looked at the common denominators in those different countries. So I'm talking about really rural Greece, I'm talking about Japan, I'm talking about certain parts of Singapore and various other countries. And the blue zones actually seem to have a lot of this that goes on, although obviously there are different blue zones around the world. And for example, in America, in the American blue zones, of course, they will have a word for menopause because, you know, they're in a Western environment. So, you know, so that's that. But the common denominator is a plant-based diet, or 99.999% recurring whole food plant-based diet. The other thing is that they tend to exercise. So a lot of the people who are living in these more primitive countries where they don't have the word for menopause, they'll be out in the field, they'll be pulling things up and you know, sort of tending to their crops and so on. Now, I'm not suggesting we all go and tend to crops, although that's actually probably a good idea in the current climate. But the point I'm making is that they are constantly moving. This is a really intrinsic part of their lifestyle. So my advice would be to think about exercise from the perspective of a three-legged stool. As human animals, what we need to do is we are designed to walk. We have to walk. It's absolutely essential. And, you know, if we can get out for at least half an hour for a minimum of 5 days a week, but I would love everybody to be out for half an hour minimum 7 days a week. That would be really ideal. Also, if you can split or stagger your exercise. Now, I know that's different during lockdown conditions because, you know, if, for example, in the UK, I don't know how things are in America, but in the UK, we're only allowed out for 1 hour a day to exercise. You are also allowed to go out shopping. You're also allowed to go out and get medicine, and you're also allowed to go and help somebody. So obviously, you know, it's a little bit fluid. So, you know, there are people that are going out. I would never recommend it and go against anything, you know, that has been set in tablets of stone in law. But what I'm saying is that, you know, people can be creative about the amount of time they spend walking, as long as they're not being silly and going and coughing on people or exposing themselves to danger, then that's fine. So that's one thing. So that's one part of the three-legged stool. The other part is resistance exercise. And that's something else that I noticed, that all of these zones where women just float through menopause without even noticing it, is that they will be doing weight bearing exercise. And so as a consequence, they will sail through menopause and they won't develop osteoporosis as well. So that's another really important part of the puzzle. And the way that that happens is because if we lift weights, if we do resistance training, what that does is it actually puts a lot of pressure on the bones by the force in the muscles, and that strengthens bone. Bone is a situation of you know, use it or lose it. So that's why we have to keep, you know, making sure that we're lifting weights and challenging ourselves. The other thing I would say, just as an aside, is that, you know, a lot of women don't want to get bulky and they think, oh, I've got to do really high reps at low weights. Nothing could be further from the truth. You will not bulk up unless you have some bizarre testosterone anomaly, which you would know about because you would have a lot of acne going on and you would have menstrual difficulties and so on. So you would already know, and you'd probably be speaking to your doctor about testosterone levels and hormonal disruption. So you know, generally speaking, for 99.9% of women, it's better to lift heavier weights, as heavy as you possibly can, and build up from there. Keep challenging yourself to lift heavier and heavier. You won't bulk up, but what you will do is you'll get very, very shapely. You'll find that your shoulders will broaden, so it makes your waist look tinier. You'll get, your bottom will lift, because we know as we get older, bottoms tend to kind of respond respond to gravity. We don't want that. So your body will lift and you'll just end up looking physically younger than you did before you started lifting weights. You will also be biologically younger because, of course, if you're also growing muscle, what happens is muscle, and when we stress muscle, it upregulates the production of human growth hormone, and also actually stops the degradation of the little caps on the ends of our chromosomes called telomeres, which as a cell replicates and as chromosomes replicate and so on, it stops them from unraveling. That's what they're there for. And we can actually, one of the ways we can measure biological age is by measuring telomere length. But just to come, we'll come on to that a bit more in a moment, but just that third part of that three-legged stool are the mindful exercises. So your yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, even Pilates, because you can't do Pilates properly unless you're really putting your mind to work and really concentrating on what your body's actually doing. So that's my recipe for sailing through the menopause. Nutrition, make sure you get that right. Stress management and exercise. Now, when I talk about stress management, the fact is that we can't really manage stress, but what we can do is we can manage our response to stressors. So the way that we do that is by developing a meditation practice. AJ, do you want me to talk about this? Because I've got...
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
We love to hear about this.
Okay. As long as everybody's okay and they're not getting bored, that's great.
You're so great to look at. Nobody's going to get bored.
Oh, I do love you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we haven't even gotten to how flawless your skin is, because that's on the list of things to ask.
Thank you, Dan. It's the magic of makeup. But so I was just going to say, one of the things I think is most important, and again has been shown to extend the length of our telomeres, is meditation, but it's a very specific type of meditation. In fact, on my website, I do have a free download, which is an instructional recording on how to do something called the relaxation response. Now, this was an approach to meditation that was developed by an amazing, wonderful, lovely man called Dr. Herbert Benson. And I had the immense honor of studying under him at the Benson Henry Institute for Mind Body Medicine at Harvard Medical School. And I like to think of him as my pretend granddad, because I never had a granddad, you see. So so Dr. Benson is my pretend granddad, and he is an extraordinary scientist. He pioneered the relaxation response, and what it is a distillation of the factors within an approach called transcendental meditation that really, really work. So being a scientist, he wanted to pull out all of the confounding factors. This is what scientists will do. So they boil down, they drill down to that particular factor that is actually causing all of these good things to happen. So what they did was they found that if you sit and repeat a mantra meditation for 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening, extraordinary things happen. Your brain actually, the structure of your brain physically changes, which is absolutely mind-blowing. The part of your brain that's involved in decision making actually becomes thicker and functions faster and better. And so what happens when we're faced with a massive stressor is that normally, if we don't do any of these wonderful meditation interventions, is that we suddenly respond without thinking, and we go into fight or flight mode immediately. What they've discovered with the relaxation response is that it almost allows you a few extra nanoseconds or even milliseconds to be able to assess the perceived threat and to actually decide how you're going to respond to it. So what it does is it elevates you out of that incredibly fast animalistic response that really zhuzhes up your adrenaline and your cortisol levels, and really just floods your body with chemicals that are shown to be, if they are there chronically, highly toxic to us, highly dangerous. But if you practice the relaxation response, that doesn't happen. So the other interesting thing about the relaxation response is that it only works as long as you do it. So it will do amazing things for you. It will balance your hormones. It will enable you to have better sleep. It will help you to reduce blood sugar. It will, or normalize blood sugar. It will actually help to normalize blood pressure. And the litany of good things it does for you, that they are constantly discovering new things, just goes on and on and on. So I really do suggest people get involved in that. But it only works when you do it. If you stop doing it, unfortunately, all of those benefits that accrue to you just kind of disappear. So this is why we do have to make a practice of meditating twice a day for 20 minutes.
I love how you just said it only works if you do it, and that can apply to everything I teach, from weight loss to diet to exercise. And people are mystified why they gain their weight back. Well, because they weren't doing what they were doing to lose the weight. So another brilliant takeaway: it only works if you do it. So I've been posting the link to your website so that they can take the free test to ascertain their biological age, and your link to your book on Amazon. But apparently, it is temporarily out of stock.
Is it really?
It's available in Kindle and Audible, but right now the paperback is out of stock.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. They did actually have another big push. It comes out through Penguin in America, and they've just had another big push, and I've been doing an awful lot of broadcasts and so on. So I guess it's sold out again. I apologize, everybody, that they will get more.
We probably
It's
should have.
gone, yeah, it's gone into translation. It's all over the world. But yeah, you know, as you rightly say, the audiobook is available and the Kindle is available as well.
You know, people say, why do you always ask your guests how old they are? Well, I don't ask my guests how old they are or how much they weigh. It's you guys are asking. So if Jayney wants to answer, she can answer.
Okay, I certainly don't mind, because I tell you something, I regard my age as an absolute privilege. I've lost far too many people before their time, and I really didn't expect, given what I was told when I was 34, that I would get this far. But I'm 56 now.
Wow. No, that's amazing. Your skin is also flawless. Is that genetics, or is it partly your diet, and
Totally, it's totally diet. I mean, I think, you know, that yes, of course, there's a genetic element to it, but by rights, because of having autoimmune conditions, you know, they do age you prematurely, very dramatically. And I noticed when I was really very unwell that I had really a lot of lines. My skin was very sallow. I had a lot of sort of discoloration and so on, that we associate with aging. And what I noticed was that when I changed the diet and had been doing it religiously for, you know, about a year or so, I suddenly thought, where have those lines on my forehead gone? This is a bit odd. And I started sort of making a bit of a study of it, because I found it so intriguing, and I was so interested in this idea of age reversal. You know, given that I'd gone from having an accelerated age to actually having a decelerated age. I mean, I actually wiped 21 years off my biological age by changing my diet and living this lifestyle. So I have to say, my skin is very, very good. I am very pleased with my skin, and it is very much to do with the lifestyle. I mean, I know that you know Dr. Frank Sabatino. You know, he's going to be 70 this year, and I'm probably outing him. I probably shouldn't have said that, but anyway, he's cool with it. He doesn't mind. But you know, his skin, you've seen him in person. His skin is absolutely amazing. And you, AJ, I mean, you know, you're absolutely stunning, and I know which birthday you were having, so you know. But yeah, you know, it is, isn't it? It is the lifestyle. It makes so much difference.
really? Do you avoid the sun?
No, I don't. I actually think the sun is really good for you. I know this is awful, isn't it? I mean, I know we're all supposed to say no, slip, slap, slop, you know, get your hat on. I completely, living in Northern Europe, I live in England, but I do spend a lot of time in Florida. And so I have to say, I'm a bit of a sun worshipper, always have been. And I have to say that I believe that you should get out into sun, don't get burnt. Don't be silly. But and if you are going to spend time in the sun and it's over, if the UV levels are particularly high, get an organic natural sunscreen on. But what has been found is that if you've got high levels of antioxidants in your blood, you tend not to get sunburnt as quickly. So if you are eating a really strongly plant-based diet, a whole food plant-based diet, as we like to say, SOS free, you have more protection against sunburn than your average person eating a standard American diet. So I think that's really interesting. I don't burn, and I have to say I do wander around quite a lot of the time without much sunscreen on. What about you, AJ? Do you like sun?
Up until 16 months ago, when I moved to the Palm Springs area, I never wore sunscreen a day in my life because I just didn't like the feeling of anything on my skin. I would bake in the sun as a teenager in my 20s and 30s with baby oil, and the sun here is a different sun. And I started getting spots on my face, and I got real scared. So now I'm one of these people that I don't even wear sunscreen. I wear a hat, which is perfect because we have to wear a mask now, and the stores are considering this a mask. And all you see is my eyes, and it's hot pink, and that's what I'm doing for now because I just didn't like the spots.
Yes, well, no, I totally get that, and I would be exactly the same. Yes, totally understandable. And I think you've got to be you've got to be careful. I'm not saying to everybody, oh, just go out and bake yourself. Please do not run away with that idea. I'm certainly not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is, if you can get out into what we call soft sun, and particularly in Northern Europe, if you can get out for 20 minutes a day, and if it's warm enough, which it sort of almost is at the moment, if you can get out in shorts with bare arms and walk for your 20-30 minutes a day in what we call soft sun, so that's early morning sun or sort of later afternoon sun, that should get your vitamin D levels up sufficiently. But I also believe it's really important to take a vitamin D supplement, especially again if you're living in Northern Europe or if you're living in Palm Springs. And it's just, I know what you mean about that different sun. If it's roasting you, then chances are that you might actually not want to get so much sun exposure. So you may actually find that again your vitamin D levels are low. I know a lot of people who live in very sunny climates who have low D levels.
Yeah. So just want to read you some of the nice comments. Karen, I wish I looked like that at 56. LOL. I wish I looked like that now. Let's see. They're saying really, oh, holy guacamole. She looks like she's 35. She is so beautiful and full of light. I agree with all those comments. When you talked about menopause, there's a lot of people that are overweight, and I'm not trying to shame them or blame them, but doesn't that make it a little bit more difficult sometimes, the symptoms, especially if the fat, there's sometimes people maybe don't look overweight, but they have the fat around their internal organs, that visceral fat, maybe because they're eating a high fat diet, either a high fat plant diet or animal product diet. And one of the speakers I interviewed for the weight loss summit said that things like coffee and alcohol not only aren't good for weight loss, but they definitely make menopausal symptoms worse. Did you find that to be true for people that you've worked with?
Absolutely right, 100%, yes. Because what we know about fat in general, adipose tissue, is that it contains, and people used to think of fat as being a very inert substance, that it was just sort of hanging around on your body, not actually doing anything apart from padding you out. We now know that it contains pro-inflammatory cytokines. Cytokines are those chemical messengers. Essentially, they go and tell our body what to do. Now, what we know about every single chronic disease, those diseases I was talking about earlier that we associate wrongly with aging as part of a natural process, they're not. Every single one of those diseases, whether it's heart disease, arthritis, whether it's the neurological diseases, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and other dementias, whether it's things like type 2 diabetes and so on, all of those have a common denominator, and that is an underlying, out of control, chronic inflammation. And that is largely as a result of eating all the wrong things, not exercising, not managing your stress response correctly, and carrying too much fat on your body for you. So I actually had that skinny obese syndrome myself, because when I was unwell, what was happening was that my inflammation levels were driving the accumulation of visceral fat around my organs. But to look at me, I was weighing in at about, I don't know, 115 pounds. I'm 5'4". So, by anybody's reckoning, that's a slim person. So I looked slim, but I was skinny obese. So I've had it myself, and it is horrendous because it drives inflammation and dramatically increases menopausal symptoms. So it's absolutely crucial for anybody who's carrying extra weight, whether it's visible weight or internal weight, to make sure that you just go and get that side of things sorted out. It's not a cosmetic issue. For some people, yeah, we care about the cosmetic side of things. Of course we do, we're humans, but it's your health. That's the most important thing. And you do not have to succumb to ailments. You do not have to just resign yourself to the fact that you're going to be disabled in old age, because you don't have to be.
Thank you. Caroline wants to know if you recommend amla powder supplement that's supposed to be high in antioxidant. She already eats a whole food plant-based diet and only takes B12. And Sharon wanted to know what your thoughts on other supplements like DHA and EPA were.
Okay, lovely. I have amla. I've got some in the kitchen right now, and it goes in my smoothies every day. Amla, what I love about it is, of course, it's a whole food, but it's incredibly high. Around about 50% of it is bioavailable vitamin C, as you know. But you see, the interesting thing about vitamin C when it occurs in fruits is that it turns up with a load of cofactors which enable your body to essentially get more bang for its buck. So, for example, if you were to take, let's say, an apple, the actual measurable amount of vitamin C in that apple is not really terribly high. If you contrasted that with a 1,000 milligram vitamin C tablet, you would think, would you not, logic would dictate that the vitamin C tablet, just basic ascorbic acid, has more vitamin C in it. Well, actually, it doesn't, because what's really crucial to understand is not just vitamin C, but vitamin C-like activity. So you can put a tablet of ascorbic acid into your body, and your body goes, huh, okay, and it has a half-life of 20 minutes in the body, and then it's just over and done with and gone. If you eat an apple, however, which contains far less measurable vitamin C, because it comes along packaged with all that constellation of phytochemicals and cofactors, your body goes yum, 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 oh, vitamin C, oh, and all this other stuff as well. And so the impact, the vitamin C-like impact upon your body is far, far higher than that tablet of pure ascorbic acid. So that's why I love things like amla and fresh fruits and so on, because they punch above their weight nutritionally. And the other question was about other supplements, EPA, DHA, and so on. Yes, I do take those. I have a really good vegan version of essential fatty acids, omega-3 essential fatty acids. And I also take sea buckthorn oil, because that has 3, 6, 7, and 9. So the omega essential oils 3, 6, 7, and 9. Now, the reason I do that is because omega 7 and 9 are particularly helpful for people who have dry eye syndrome. And that is something that goes very much hand in hand with rheumatoid arthritis. So while I've got I've done unbelievably well with all my RA-like symptoms. There are certain little things that I still have to work on, I'll be absolutely honest with you, and I get dry eyes, and it may just be one of those things that would have happened anyway, I don't know. So I find that sea buckthorn oil for me works brilliantly to keep my eyes moisturized, and funny enough, actually, sometimes for people, if they get a lot of tearing, their eyes stream a lot, that can actually be a symptom of dry eye, would you believe? It sounds totally counterintuitive, but it can be. So if you've got streaming eyes or very, very, very itchy eyes, think about taking sea buckthorn oil, which is a really beautiful supplement, and it gives you all of those bioavailable essential fatty acids. But as I say, I do hedge my bets and take a nice vegan EPA DHA as well. Very important. Of course, the other thing that we can't not mention is B12. Yes, we vegans are, you know, potentially at risk, some small risk of being low in B12, but then so is the rest of the population as well. So, you know, I would say everybody really should be taking a B12, quite honestly. What else do I take? Oh, I do take D3. I take 2000 IUs of D3. My D3 also contains vitamin K and boron, because when I was unwell, I was obviously non-weight bearing for 10 years. 10 years in a wheelchair messes with your bone density big time, as you can well imagine. So I ended up with dreadful osteoporosis. I was only 35 when they gave me a DEXA scan, and I was measuring at the same bone density of an elderly, an 86-year-old lady with osteoporosis. But here's a really interesting thing. A lot of doctors will have us believe that we cannot reverse bone loss with just weight-bearing exercise alone. They will give us, and on the NHS here, they'll give you D2, which is ridiculous because your body doesn't metabolize D2 properly. You need to take D3, very, very important for bone health. And you can take other, you know, forms of bioavailable calcium, which is really very important, and exercise. And within a year, I had reversed that osteoporosis. Because you've got to understand, I'd gone from being totally wheelchair bound and immobile to being back to walking and getting around and exercising and being able to go to the gym and so on and so forth. So what I'm saying is, if you've been diagnosed with osteopenia or osteoporosis, all is not lost. Personally, I would steer clear of things like Fosamax and so on. These drugs are so unbelievably dangerous. We're starting to see a resurgence of something that was an affliction back in the Victorian era, phossy jaw. The young girls working in the match factories were dealing with the chemical phosphorus that went on the top of the matches. The chemical is so poisonous that it caused terrible bone loss in their jaws, and girls were committing suicide left, right, and center because they were so disfigured by this horrific illness. And it died out in the Victorian era when they realized that this drug, this chemical, phosphorus, was causing this problem. They changed the formula. And now we're seeing a resurgence of phossy jaw in people from Fosamax, which is, it's a medical crime. It's disgraceful. So, you know, I would say, take the natural route. You can do it. You can regrow bone, resistance training, walking. One of the exercises that lots of people don't know about is, and I'll have to try to describe this to you because I can't step back far enough to actually demonstrate it. What I'd like you to do, if you've got any bone problems or to prevent bone problems, is to 30 times in a row, and do this several times throughout the days. You rise onto the tips of your toes and you drop down hard onto your heels. You rise onto the tips of your toes and drop down hard onto your heels, as hard as you can. What that does is it sends spiral shock waves up through all of the long bones in your body, through your hips, up your spine, up your neck, and so on. And it's actually putting pressure onto, percussive pressure onto your bones. It's shocking your bones. And what that does is it tells your bones, get stronger, you're being needed. We're recruiting you because there's all this pressure from this bouncing that's going on. It doesn't work if you're wearing trainers. You really ideally should be doing this in bare feet on a hard floor. The harder your flooring is, the better, because you can actually shock your bones more dramatically, so to speak. Now, obviously, clearly, again, use common sense. If you've got any problems with knee joints and so on, you might want to go a little bit easier. So test it out, see how you do. Don't do anything silly. You know, we're all grown-ups here. Just make sure that what you're doing is sensible and relevant for you as an individual.
Terrific, thank you. So a couple of questions. Do you do private consults with people? And someone called Facebook user, I'm calling you that because that's what it says, it doesn't have your name, says, do you know anything about Soto Pele therapy, a hormone balancing pellet that goes under the skin? And of course, have you mentioned whether or not HRT is an acceptable thing for women to do that have, you know, painful intercourse and dryness, sometimes even bleeding?
Of course, yes, absolutely. The first question is yes, I do. I have an international practice. And it's, of course, even more relevant nowadays, now that we're all online. So, yeah, because I teach all over the world. I sort of have an international clientele. And so I do see people via Zoom or Skype or what have you. And people can easily contact me via my website or AJ, I'm sure you can give people my details if they would like them.
I've
And
been
so,
posting all throughout the
oh,
broadcast.
fabulous. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Great. As far as hormonal, bioidentical hormonal replacement therapy, there are, yeah, now I would say that there can be a place for it. I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I am not a fan of synthetic hormone replacement at all. It just has no place in female health and well-being. We all know that it's dangerous. We all know that you know, it really is just not suitable for us ladies. So what we should be looking at, if this is really a huge option, and if you really cannot get things under control by changing your diet, by exercising, by managing stress. Honestly, you know, I promise you that all the research shows that if you can do all of these things, and this is what I coach people in doing, is to how to bring all these disparate bits together. And actually, it's called lifestyle medicine. That's essentially what I do. So if you cannot bring all of those disparate bits together for whatever reason, and you really feel that hormonal replacement therapy is where you want to go, then seek out somebody who is going to work with you from a natural hormone replacement perspective only, and really make sure they know what they're doing and that they will test you regularly. It's absolutely crucial. I won't work with anybody unless I test them first. That's another thing, even nutritionally. You know, if somebody says, do I need a particular supplement? My answer is, well, if we're, you know, forgetting the obvious ones that we've just spoken about, which everybody really should be looking at, but if somebody says, oh, I think I might be low in zinc, or I think I might be low in, I don't know, pantothenic acid, I need to see the data. I will never prescribe anything for anybody unless we've actually got a demonstrable rationale for doing so. I think it's crucial. A, it saves the patient money and they're not, you know, sort of on some wild goose chase. And B, it means that we know what we're doing. We know how the person's doing at any one time, and we can monitor progression. And so we can, and that's what I like with my patients. They can actually see themselves getting better, not just how they feel, but on paper, we actually have the records.
That's terrific. Any advice for wrinkles? And are those lines you get here, which are called crow's feet, which are, you know, like, you know, facial lines from smiling? Is that the same as wrinkles, or wrinkles? And
Yes. No, they are wrinkles. Yeah, absolutely. So crow's feet we get from smiling too much. So, you know, I smile a lot, so I have them. And I don't mind that they're there, you know. It's so nice, I think, in a way, because if you think about all the smiles you've had, it's left some lasting evidence, you know, so I think they're lovely. And particularly on men, it's so unfair, isn't it? You know, guys get them and they just look dead sexy, don't they? So anyway, moving swiftly on. You can get wrinkles in the sort of the cheek area, and some of us wrinkle more than others. generally speaking, the reason for that is that we may not be getting enough nutrients or enough of the right nutrients. There may be an issue behind, you know, if the person thinks, well, no, do you know, I think I'm really eating perfectly, but I've got all of these wrinkles. Well, it may well be that what's happening is that you are not absorbing your food as well as you perhaps could be. So it may be that your gut flora are, they maybe could use some pepping up with prebiotics, so things like inulin, eating artichokes and banana and so on. Conversely, it may be that you need probiotics, and so taking a really good, strong, clinical grade probiotic is a really good idea. If you're going to look for a probiotic, make sure that on the packaging they say that it's been lab tested and has been proven to be able to get past your hydrochloric acid in your stomach, your digestive juices, and through into your intestines. Because if they're just getting yummed up by your digestive juices, your hydrochloric acid, then they're not going to work, are they? You know, it stands to reason. So you need to make sure you've got something that will actually get into your intestines. It's really, really important. There are some good ones out there. There are some cheap ones out there. Unfortunately, with probiotics, you get what you pay for. So I shall leave that at that. And AJ, what else were we asking? Oh, we were asking something about wrinkles.
Yeah, if just what you do about them, basically.
Okay, yeah. So again, as I say, what I've noticed is that in myself and in my patients, I've noticed that when we get digestion and assimilation sorted out, and that they are eating a whole food plant-based diet, and more importantly, this huge picture of managing our stress response, wrinkles do actually tend to disappear. Now, the reason we get wrinkles is because of, and I'm sure so many of your viewers will know all about AGEs, or advanced glycation end products, which I'm sure many, many of your guests have spoken about. AGEs are what happens in our bodies when proteins cross-link with sugars in the presence of oxygen. So if we have, and we have exogenous AGEs and endogenous AGEs. Endogenous AGEs are AGEs, advanced glycation end products, that our bodies produce naturally. That does happen, and it's part of our metabolic process. But if we take in extra AGEs, and it's very easy to do so by taking in sugars, by taking in burnt foods and so on, or toasted foods or overcooked foods, which is one of the reasons why a high raw diet is so healthy. What happens is we're bringing in these AGEs. What happens is that they link with and degrade the collagen in our skin. The degradation of collagen is what actually causes our skin to wrinkle. Now, that's a visible example of the degradation of collagen, but you've got to understand that collagen is one of the most frequently found proteins throughout our entire bodies. It's kind of our body's scaffolding. And so what actually happens is if we've got high levels or excess levels of AGEs, whilst we're seeing a cosmetic issue on the skin, what's actually going on inside us is far, far worse. And it's been found that elevated levels of AGEs cause kidney problems, leading to kidney failure and death. They cause problems with our eyes, leading to the inability to actually, for the eye to accommodate, because you'll get stiffening of the muscles around the eyes and so on. And all sorts of other problems. So this is one of the reasons, another reason, if you needed another reason, to cut out added refined sugars and to avoid all of those simple carbohydrates, you know, the cookies and the breads and the this and that and the other, which of course is what you teach about, AJ. So, you know, all of your wisdom, this is what people need to listen to what you're talking about. It's absolutely crucial for people.
Great. Well, thank you. We're just getting such lovely comments about you. It's going so fast, but people are saying, like, Sue, I learned so much from her today, from shampoo to meditation. And she reminds me of Jessica Rabbit and a mermaid. So pretty, and love her voice. Thank you, Jayney, for this amazing information, says Miss Misty. And Jan says, what an amazing woman, beautiful. Sue says she's a wealth of information. I love her. Wow. Jody, thank you so much for introducing us to Jayney. She's an incredible wealth of knowledge. Well, that's why you've got to subscribe to my YouTube page and my mailing list, because every day I'm bringing you amazing people. And of course, I'm interviewing all the usual suspects in the plant-based world, Dr. McDougall, Dr. Furman, Dr. Barnard, and I'll keep interviewing them. But there's a lot of people doing a lot of great work all over the globe in the plant-based world. And it's my mission to bring all of them to you this year. So Jayney, we have time for one more question, and every guest gets asked this because it just keeps coming up. What do you eat in a day?
Oh my goodness, right, okay. Yeah. And first of all, thank you everybody for those really incredibly kind comments. It's just so appreciated, thank you. So to answer your question, AJ, so I start off in the morning with celery juice because I find that it really dramatically reduces any inflammation that I might have. Now, bear in mind, I'm very, very well controlled, super healthy, doing really, really well with the RA and other autoimmune issues that I have going on. Or I should say have diagnosed, but I keep under control. So celery juice, and I wait half an hour before any food. And then I will have possibly a smoothie. In the smoothie goes anything I happen to have around. I tend to keep a stash of organic frozen fruit on hand in the freezer, just in case I don't have anything fresh. Also, it makes quite a nice smoothie because, you know, it takes the place of ice cubes and you're getting more nutritional bang for your buck. Always, always greens go into that smoothie. It's for me, I can't do a smoothie without a handful of spinach, a handful of kale, some broccoli perhaps, that sort of thing. So, and then I'll put in hemp seeds, possibly a date if I'm feeling a bit, you know, cheeky. And then what else do I put in? That's pretty much it. Sometimes I may put in, sometimes if I want a creamier smoothie, perhaps a few little oats, that sort of thing, rolled oats, that is. And then good quality water. Zhuzh that up in the high-speed blender, and that's great. That'll probably keep me going till lunch. Or if I don't do that, I may have a little bowl of oatmeal with fruit, or I may just do fresh fruits, that's it. And then, so that's all raw. And then lunchtime is a massive AJ-sized salad, possibly with a baked potato, that sort of thing. Beans for protein. I do love my black beans. I love my red kidney beans. I love my garbanzo beans, or chickpeas as we call them in England. And I'll make a really nice dressing, perhaps, you know, a walnut. A walnut-based dressing tends to work well for me. So I may make a sort of a honey mustard dressing. So obviously there's no real honey in there. Again, it may be a date in there for that little touch of sweetness. And then in the evening, possibly a massive great bowl of steamed vegetables of all shapes and sizes. So Brussels sprouts, kale, broccoli, spinach, red cabbage, ordinary other cabbages, bok choy, you name it. If it grows, it goes in the steamer. And I'll possibly have that with maybe with a little, actually, no, I do like tofu, actually. That my weakness is tofu. So sometimes I throw a bit of tofu into the steamer as well. And then obviously sprinkle that liberally with lemon juice, because of course, obviously the lemon juice helps the bioavailability of iron in those veggies. And that's it. It's really simple. It sounds terribly boring in a way because you think, oh, you're just eating the same things day in, day out. But of course, what you're doing is you're actually swapping up the different types of veggies and fruits in your salad and veggies in your steamies and things like that. So yeah, and I will get creative. I've got quite a few recipes. I created a recipe book for people in my organization and people that come to my site. And so I do make lovely SOS-free, whole food, vegan, gorgeous, delicious plant-based curries and black beans and, you know, all of those wonderful things for treats now and again.
Well, good for you. I agree with you. Honey mustard, it's not really honey, but I have a really good recipe on YouTube for free, and I do enjoy those kind of things as well. And, you know, I don't do smoothies mainly because I'm just always cold. Like, this is why I dress like this and live in the desert. But yesterday, our guest was Dr. Jen Hawk, who's living in a hotel right now because her flight got canceled. And she's living on cilantro banana smoothies. And she just posted one on Instagram. And I've never had that combination. I'm thinking, that sounds amazing. I mean, I'm craving this, and we only go to the store once a week here. So as soon as I can get cilantro, you know I'm making that smoothie.
Sounds amazing. I've never heard of that combination either, but I'm going to give it a go.
Me
Brilliant.
neither. And she said sometimes she puts a little mango in, and I'm like, I don't know why. It's just like I'm obsessed with trying that smoothie. I could talk to you forever. You could come back again and we can talk about other things. And hopefully your book will be back on Amazon very soon. Any friend of Frank Sabatino's is a friend of mine, and he has very good taste in guests. So thank you so much, Frank, for referring me to Jayney. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your expertise with our audience. And you were very well received, and I appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you so much, AJ, and thank you so much, everybody. It's just been amazing being with you. It's such an honor. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And guys, please come back at 1 p.m. when we'll be speaking to Robbie Barbero from Mastering Diabetes. Take care.